All right. Hello, and welcome back to Technology Now, a weekly show from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise where we take what's happening in the world and explore how it's changing the way organizations are using technology. We're your hosts, Aubrey Lovell
and Michael Bird. In this episode, I'll be taking you on a trip to London for the final race weekend of the 10th season of the Formula E Championship, which was held on the weekend of the 20th and 21st of July. I've been looking at the tech behind the event, how Formula E is transforming the world of racing, and what our organizations can learn from the cutting edge of motorsport.
Super excited about this one, Michael. So if you're the kind of person who needs to know why what's going on in the world matters to your organization, this podcast is for you. And as always, if you haven't yet, subscribe to your podcast app of choice so you don't miss out. All right, Michael, over to you at the racetrack.
Yeah, let's do it. Thanks, Aubrey, and I'm here at the Excel Centre in London's Docklands, home of the 2024 Hankook London E-Prix. So, Formula E. The series started in 2014 with the ethos of making racing accessible and sustainable. The series features urban racetracks based as much as possible on public roads in order to reduce the miles people need to travel to see races and, of course, to reduce the amount of CO2 inherent in building and maintaining racetracks. The 2024 season featured 16 races in 10 cities, with some cities hosting 2 races over a weekend to further reduce travel time and encourage spectators. The track of the 2024 Hankook London E-Prix winds its way around and inside the Excel London, a conference centre in the heart of London's Docklands. In particular, and this is my favourite part of the track, the start-finish straight, and where I'm stood right now, the team's garages go right through the middle of one of the conference halls. It's a pretty awesome experience. Formula E is a semi-spec series, which means all 11 teams and 22 drivers use relatively similar cars, currently in the third generation, which features 350 kilowatt powertrains and 200 mile per hour top speeds. The fourth generation, which is due to be launched in a couple of years, will feature power boosts of up to 600 kilowatts, wow, which is going to be real face-peeling stuff. At any rate, the teams focus their R&D efforts on the powertrain, gearbox, suspension, and software, and it's these areas that sets one car apart from another in terms of performance. It means there's a whole load of setup, skill, and teamwork required to win, rather than just who has the most power or the best aerodynamics. And that makes it not only exciting, but something that we can all potentially take lessons from for our own organizations, because getting the most out of what we've got and working out where we can still be imaginative and more competitive is something that's useful for pretty much every organization. One of those areas is in training and familiarity. Here, knowing how the circuit and how the car will behave at any given moment is obviously a huge advantage. But how do you work that out when you've only got the race weekend? These are street circuits, after all, so once the race is over, everything just gets packed away. Well, one way is to use sim racing technologies, essentially incredibly accurate digital twins of a racetrack with a full suite of driving controls and simulated movement, where drivers can test their setups in a variety of conditions to prepare for race day. The other is to look at the raw data from the real world and reflect on it. It's been a season of mixed fortunes for Maserati MSG Racing, which means there's plenty to learn from, as Deputy Team Principal Cyril Blaze explains. So obviously we'll be taking lessons from this year's performance. Part of that will be, I suppose, like self-learning and reflection. How does the team break down the teams and the drivers' performance and build on that in terms of sort of raw data and analytics? Like, what does that look like for you?
Basically, we collect a lot of data through the year, being through the cars of the driver. And basically, we plot a lot of performance metrics to see where do we qualify in average. Do we go forward or backward in the race? If we do, going forward and backward in one kind of track, are we more performant on street circuits? Are we a bit more performant on permanent circuits, And we look at all these metrics. And that's why basically this KPI give you performance to show you exactly where you are strong and where you are weak. And obviously the aim in the interseason is to work on our weaknesses, make sure that where we are good, we stay good. But obviously I put a lot of focus on the weak area to be able to be consistent and have a more global round performance for next year. Also, Formula E schedule, is very unique in a way that there's very little time between sessions. So you have to come with a very good preparation, and on the race day, it becomes about execution. So this is why the preparation prior to the event is critical. We prep a lot with the deal driver, and then the race driver come, and then normally we should be focusing on performance item and make sure that we as well prepare as we can.
We'd love to know a little bit more about that blurring of the real world and the digital world. Do you think virtual racing and testing is increasingly going to become part of your real world performance package?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the aim is being an online simulation tool or flight simulation tools, using the virtual world, to prep for the events. And basically the aim of the game is to be correlated, the best you can. And the aim for every engineer is to have a virtual world that is matching perfectly what you have in the real world. So you can actually focus on the right thing and be as best prepared as you can. But this is very challenging. For us, we're quite limited in the amount of testing that we get, same as Formula One. This is why all the world of the virtual world, the AI, is becoming increasingly important to invest and to develop in those areas, because this what will give you performance, in the midterm and the long term. So it's already very important, and I think it will only become more and more important in the future.
It sounds like you're sort of creating a digital twin of both your car and the track.
Yeah.
So you can do testing in the virtual world as much as you want, and to try and translate that into the real world.
Absolutely. Like I said, because testing is very restricted, you have to find other ways to be able to improve and to basically practice. And as you mentioned, you're not able to come at the track, a week later and say, okay, in the race, we think we could have been better testing this and that. And how do you apply that, in the real life? And you do that through virtual world and the simulator.
And does the real world help then inform how the simulator works? Do you take data from this weekend, for example, and will you feed that back into the simulator?
Absolutely. It's a constant process of going back and forth. So before the event, you use the simulator to prep for the event. And obviously, you've got the real events. And then you take the data from the real event to then feed back to the simulator to see where your correlation is and see that what was right, what was wrong, what could be improved, and what could have made the preparation, more realistic and could have been more useful to the driver. So it's always a back and forth game, and the idea is to get the two worlds to match. But obviously, it takes a lot of time, correlation, efforts, and investment. But that's the aim of the game, because the closer you are from the virtual world to the real world, then the more useful and the more you can take out of it. So that's the aim of the game.
Yeah, totally. So where do you think, in Maserati MSG's case, the other extra seconds are going to come from next season in terms of, I guess, like tech or training the team?
First of all, hopefully, I hope it's tenths of a second, not seconds.
Seconds would be great, wouldn't it?
Second will be great, because then we'll be well ahead of everybody. But no, it has to come from all the area. Obviously, engineering team working on the setup of the car. Energy management, obviously, is a big topic. Next year, there's new rules coming into play with four-wheel drive, new tires. So obviously, we'll have to be well prepared and develop of the off-season. But execution of the team, there will be the implementation of the boost charge, pit stop during the race. So strategy and good execution will be the main focus for next season.
So final question from me: what are you most looking forward to, most excited about next season?
Win races.
Good answer.
That's the most exciting. We had the only one race win this year, but we're gonna go back to the top, and I want to see the team perform and bringing more trophy, back to the factory, because at the end of the day, that's the excitement of racing. It's when you can beat all the other team and be on the top. There's no better feeling. So I think our focus will be on that. This year we had up and downs. There have been some very strong performance, but I think what we've been lacking is consistency. Yeah, we've shown that we can fight at the front. We've shown that we can win races. We know how to do it. Now we just need to show it on a consistent manner and be there, week in, week out, and be there every weekend.
That's awesome, Michael. Thank you. And what an amazing event. And super thanks to Cyril as well. So, plenty of ways that teams can learn about their performance in their cars and improve it. But what does that mean for the drivers?
Well, we'll find out in just a minute, because, Aubrey, first it is time for Today I Learned. So, Aubrey, we've heard quite enough from me this episode. What have you got for us today?
Okay, well, I've got something surprising for you, and it's definitely not on my 2024 bingo card. But basically, Japan has officially said goodbye to the humble floppy disk.
Ooh.
Yes, 13 years after the format was officially abandoned by most major manufacturers for being utterly obsolete, the Japanese government has followed suit. Now, despite Japan being seen as a hotbed of high-tech creativity, there's certain parts of the country which have lagged behind. Outside of the major cities, many places still don't take credit or debit cards, for example, which is really interesting. Meanwhile, fax is still a common format over email for official documentation, and many companies still require mail to be sent using personal stamps in the same vein as old wax seals.
Wow.
It's really crazy to think about. And one of these longstanding traditions has been submitting documents on floppy disks. So over 1,000 laws surround the use of the 1.44 megabyte disks, specifying that they must be used in countless government operations and for sending in official records. So it was only in 2021 that the government pledged to eliminate them, and it's taken 3 years to do so, with all but one law being repealed a couple of weeks ago after years of pushback. Next on the list to go is the fax machine, but that's apparently still mired in controversy. But who are we to judge? Maybe it's time to let it go.
Maybe it is. Thank you for that, Aubrey. Right. From letting go of the past to celebrating the future, it's back to the 2024 Hankook London E-Prix, where I caught up with Maserati MSG racing driver Maximilian Günther. And I wanted to start by asking him about how all of this data and engineering knowledge affects him behind the wheel.
Yeah, so on data you see pretty much everything that's going on in a race car. Still you've got the human side that you need to connect with that, and that's why this communication engineer-driver, this relationship is very important. From this season to next year, what do we learn? I mean, obviously there are many tracks that we will race on next year that we raced this year already. So here you've got naturally a lot of data and knowledge. But we have a few things to adapt for next year. We've got new tires. We will have four-wheel drive, always when we have 350 kilowatt of power, so attack mode. This is both for the race and for quali. And that's a big part. We will have pit stops with the fast charging. So quite a few new elements that you have to get on top with. So I would say there is maybe 50-60% of knowledge from this year, but then almost another 50 from that we have to learn in the off season about the new package, new car. There is a lot, obviously, on the technical side that you learn about the package, driver team, driver car, where there are small details to gain, but as well on just the human side. Like I'm really working a lot on the mental side, on my personal preparation, and just how to be in the best possible shape. And there are always learnings to get better.
And how has your training evolved year on year? Just tell me a little bit about your training, your preparation for a race.
Yeah, so with the team, basically the simulator is the best performance tool for us in the off season, but especially before the races, because you really get a good groove and a good understanding of each track layout as a driver. And we do this for between 2 and 3 days before every event. Then obviously the physical side is really the base for everything. You have not every day, but I would say 5 days a week if I'm back home in Monaco. We've got a good mixture of like cardio training in the gym, core stability for the G-forces, coordination, big part. We have to do many things at the same time in the car. So that's one part. We touched briefly on the mental side. So it's quite complex as a racing driver, and I really enjoy this part as well on preparation.
And you mentioned the simulator. How much time do you spend in the simulator before each race?
It's between 2 and 3 days that we split between Jehan and myself. So it means 1.5 days usually per driver for the event. What we do there is, of course, we do some qualifying simulations for a fast lap, but the majority is really on the race management, because in Formula E, the energy management is such a crucial part. There is so much fine tuning that you have to do, and this is what we do a lot in a simulator.
And talk me through, what's that process? Is that just about, maybe just simplify it for me, I don't know, squeezing the accelerator less and lifting off at various points and maybe tucking behind other drivers at various points? Is it a bit of that, or is there way more to it than that?
Yeah, you're actually not too far away.
Okay.
So it's obviously very, very detailed, very complicated. But yeah, in simple words, what you try to do is in the races to try to drive at all times as efficient as possible. So
Right,
your fights against other cars, overtaking, defending, all going on like in a normal race. But the whole time you have to keep in mind your energy consumption, and you have to hit your numbers that you figured out before in the simulator. And it's a bit like playing chess during the race, and this is what you prepare for in the simulator.
So you could sort of floor it to overtake a competitor, but if you do that, you'll maybe use too much energy, so then later in the race they can try and catch you.
Correct. So obviously there is one big part on like the pure deployment side, how we call it. So what you do with your throttle, the more you use it, obviously the more you consume. It's a bit like fuel saving in a normal car. But then as well, we've got another part, which is the regen, so the charge of the battery. So every time we touch the brake pedal, we charge the battery. And there are some different techniques of driving, how to get the most out of both, this ratio of deployment and charge. And yeah, that's what you train for each track individual.
Yeah. But I suppose the actual simulator, the team simulator, that is a crucial part of your training.
Like if you walk up and down this pit lane, if you see the quality of both teams and drivers, it's extremely high. And you can't afford to be less prepared compared to the others.
Sure.
You always try to push the boundaries in all aspects, and it starts in a simulator.
Awesome stuff. Well, it has been great to learn from the Maserati MSG Racing team about how data, simulation and insights are helping them to compete on and off the track. And I can't wait to see what next season brings for them. But that's in the future. For now, it's time to move out of the way very, very quickly and enjoy the spectacle that is watching and hearing electric race cars power their way along this circuit and through the streets of London. Whew, not often you get to see that or say that.
Fascinating stuff. That's awesome, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was actually pretty cool.
I'm super, super jealous. It sounded like a great time. And you can find more on the topics discussed in today's episode in the show notes.
Right. Well, we are getting towards the end of the show, which means it is time for This Week in History, a look at monumental events in the world of business and technology, which has changed our lives. Aubrey, what was last week's clue?
So the clue last week was it's 1888. Dude, where's my car? Did you get this one, Michael?
No, not a clue. What was it?
So this one's a good story. So this week in 1888, Bertha Benz, wife of inventor Carl Benz, made the first ever motor tour. So infuriated with the slow uptake of the motor car as an invention, she stole one of her husband's prototypes, packed a bag and her teenage sons, and made an 180-kilometer or the equivalent of a 112-mile drive to see some relatives. Now, it wasn't an easy trip. Paved roads were a rarity, and being an early model automobile, Benz's patent motor wagon didn't have such luxuries as working brakes, which Bertha invented along the way. What a stunning woman. Having a cobbler fashion some leather braking shoes to help the vehicle stop. It was an amazing trip that garnered plenty of press attention for the newfangled invention, and the rest, they say, is history. And the clue next week, it's 1911, and we're heading around the world in 17 minutes. Do you know what it is, Michael?
Not a clue.
Okay. Well, I don't either. But if you do know, keep it to yourself and you'll find out next episode. Okay. That brings us to the end of Technology Now for this week.
Yeah, and a huge thank you to our guests from Maserati MSG Racing, Cyril Blaze, Director of Engineering, and driver Maximilian Günther. And to you, thank you so much for joining us. Technology Now is hosted by Aubrey Lovell and myself, Michael Bird. And this episode was produced by Sam Datapolan and Al Booth, with production support from Harry Morton, Zoe Anderson, Alicia Kempson, Alison Paisley, Alyssa Mitchery, Camilla Patel, and Chloe Sewell.
Our social editorial team is Rebecca Wissinger, Judy Ann Goldman, Katie Guarino, and our social media designers are Alejandra Garcia, Carlos Alberto Suarez, and Ambar Maldonado.
Technology Now is a Lower Street production for Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and we'll see you the same time, same place next week. Cheers!